Hey everyone, what's up? It's Jen. Welcome back to my channel. We are going to be talking today about fat loss, metabolism, and I'm going to run you through the most important piece of advice I can give anybody when it comes to obtaining your forever home or your forever goal body. So when I talk about forever goal, it looks like this. Let me explain it to you. You can eat all the food. So yes, I have my whiteboard back out. And I'm hoping, I'm sorry there's a bit of a glare on the screen, but my place isn't super light. And if I keep the blinds open, then it creates glares on the screen. So I had to close them and then put my selfie light on. So we're here with the selfie light. And so you might see a little ring on my whiteboard, and I apologize for that. So if you are in this forever homebody, it doesn't mean everything's perfect and you never have to work for it anymore, but you are able to eat all the foods. So your digestive tract is so much more efficient and able to process foods. You feel optimal, you feel really good in your day-to-day. You have improved health markers, which is a huge aspect of your nutrition planning. You have one wardrobe. You don't have multiple wardrobes throughout the year. You have one. You have a consistent body weight. So there's no more of these fluctuations. And if you do fluctuate, it's very minimal and you can really pinpoint it to, say, your menstrual cycle or foods you've eaten, such as excessive sodium or being sore from your workout. So it's like this little fine-tuned machine. You have energy, your hormones are balanced. So your menstrual cycles, maybe you do get some symptoms coming in, but they're not super aggressive and they're manageable, it's tolerable. And you have an optimal amount of food intake. So that's kind of this forever goal, forever home, this place of peace, the magical unicorn that people are looking for. And the expectation, so I don't know if you can see this, but I hope you can. There's this expectation to get there, to have this goal, this holy grail is you start here and you go there. And it's just boom, it's a linear process. You get on your diet. I'm gonna get my little marker here. Your thoughts are diet. To get there, you gotta diet. That's the thoughts. And if it's not about dieting, then it's about pushing calories as high as they possibly can go through reverse dieting. So I have been coaching reverse dieting for years, and I'm going to tell you, I'm just as at fault for sending out this message, because I, at one point as a coach, wanted to send the message to my clients, you can eat shit tons of food and have your forever goal. And to a degree, there's some truth to that, because you should be able to digest tons of different foods and not have a body with repercussions. But the reality is not everybody's going to have this crazy threshold. And I'm going to talk more about what that actually can look like and how reverse dieting can work in this process versus what it's not going to do for you. So this is non-linear. You have this belief you're going to eat tons and tons of food eventually, but in the meantime, you're going to diet, and your life problems are going to go away because you're in the body of your dreams and you're just going to stay shredded and ripped all the time. So, but the expectation of that is you're going to get there through cut. Keep dieting. And so you're climbing onto the next diet. So whether it's a start-stop every Monday or the sensationalism of what you see and driving in the next bus of nutritional guruism, such as now we're intermittent fasting, we're going keto, we're going low carb, we're carb cycling, we're doing all the sizzle, but we're never really building the steak. So this whole thing about I just need to diet, when you hear girls say 1,200 calories is the magic number, and I'm always trying to get to 1,200 calories. So this is an expectation in the head, in the brain, societal, of what you think is going to get you towards your goal. You either have to diet, or diet, reverse diet, reverse diet, and voila. You're gonna be in the body of your dreams. And unfortunately, that's just not really how it works. So the typical pattern that I see, which is like, when I say typical, I'm going to say like majority of the time, when it comes to this expectation and this behavior of constantly dieting. So, and so like when we talk about dieting, even tracking macros is dieting. But of course, depending upon your caloric intake, you're either in a caloric surplus, a maintenance, or a caloric deficit, or in the worst case scenario, absolute caloric deficit. So you can still be dieting on macros, even though you might be in maintenance or surplus. So when we talk about dieting, flexible dieting is still a diet. And I just want to point that out to people. What I love about flexible dieting is it actually bridges a gap between like this formed belief of what your body can and cannot do with food and how your brain can and cannot process food, and getting to the other side where you don't have to do those things anymore. So for me as a coach, flexible dieting isn't a life sentence. It's not like, hey, we're going to flexible diet for the rest of your life. It's a bridge between two avenues. And so the long-term forever goal of being here involves, usually in my experience, taking someone through a flexible diet approach to get there, because there's so much fear surrounding food. So the typical pattern that I see is the start and the stop, which then drives into shame and guilt. There's a lot of why me? Like, why is my body not like other people's? And a lot of time spent comparing and scrolling, comparing and scrolling. There's a lack of trust within themselves, with food, with their bodies, with their experience, which causes a lot of knee-jerk reactions, taking it into their own hands all the time. And this is like a big thing if you're being coached, is if you have a coach who really understands this and is working with you, constantly taking things into your own hands is like constantly ripping off the Band-Aid, and that becomes a problem. Chronic deficit. So always driving calories down, but then having habits that, because it's impossible to maintain that, having behaviors that then do the opposite of what you want. Hormonal shifts and changes. Stress pattern is up. And I'm going to talk about this in a second because this is huge. Digestion is off. Confidence is down. Lack of focus, distraction, hormonal issues. So this is like not just your menstrual cycle. I'm talking like your lack of sex drive, your PMS going into your cycle, the way you ovulate, hormonal issues, and cortisol. I'm going to talk about cortisol in just a sec because this is like a big one here. Won't put on the bikini, not paying much attention to health markers and how you're actually feeling. So there's a lot of suppression of like what's really going on with your body. And you feel like garbage, but you keep repeating this pattern. Now, I want to talk about the cortisol connection with this quick, because cortisol gets a really bad name. Cortisol serves a huge purpose in our bodies. In fact, cortisol is vital to keep you alive. Like, you need cortisol. So when we try to say like, you need no cortisol, eradicate it, that's wrong, because you need cortisol, and you need healthy cortisol to manage inflammation, okay? So that's really important. Cortisol is responsible for assisting in managing inflammation. So when inflammation hits, okay, when cortisol patterns become dysregulated due to chronic dieting, because when you continue pulling into a deficit, you send out a signal to your hormones to adapt, okay? And along with that, stress hormone will also start interplaying. So it's not just your female sex hormones at play here. It is also your adrenal function and your cortisol patterns that are shifting to manage the stress. So then you actually end up with more inflammation in your body. And it's not just in your body, okay? It's not just your joints. It's not just your fluid levels. It is your gut health, causing a lot of inflammation in your guts. So if you're noticing all this chronic dieting and you're not going to the bathroom properly, there's a lot of inflammation at play with that. Also, lack of fiber and water and all those different things. But the inflammatory response as well as the hormonal shift is huge, huge, huge in your gut health. And then that doesn't even account for if your diet is so lacking in nutritional value because you're eating tons of processed foods, or you're just not eating at all, or you're sticking to 5 foods. You're robbing your gut of its essential needs of assimilation and breakdown. It's no different if you're constantly over supplementing, and I will talk about that more in another video. But the big one of inflammation that people do not understand is their brain. And so when you're in this pattern, okay, when you're in this pattern of chronic dieting and underfeeding, you are increasing hormone shifts, which increases stress, which then causes more inflammation, and the inflammation in the brain is then going to cause a lot of dysfunction junction when it comes to letting go of this pattern. So we talk about the whole thing of lack of trust with yourself, but also the guilt and the shame that comes with it. So it's this nasty cycle of not only starting and stopping, but feeling empowered because of the shiny new plan or the new intention, covered up with the guilt and the shame of not actually being able to sustain it. And then you also go back into obsessive thinking. And so the brain's never having a chance to cool down. There's always obsessing. It's always obsessing. You're looking for the next cure. You're looking for the next thing to fix you. You're obsessing over what other people are doing on social media, comparing yourself, calculating your body like it's a computer, and then constantly trying to drive those numbers into you like you're a robot. So this is like a good example of this behavior, and I'm going to kind of be tongue in cheek with it because I think it's fun, but no offense to anyone that may be behaving this way, because it's not your fault. You've programmed your brain to be this way, and you programmed your body to be this way, because in the biology of weight control, we as a species are designed for survival. So the body and the brain don't know the difference between a physical attack, or an emotional attack. So if you don't think that your obsessive thinking and your guilt and your shame and all those things that go into where your mindset is going, because you're programming your brain and your body to be that way, then you're not dealing with your reality. Because that stress, that overconsumption of thought, that constant scrolling, the comparison game, the calculating, the perfectionism, all of that plays into your hormones. It all plays in. And so if we look at it like we've got our energy balance, then we have our hormones adjusting to our energy balance. And I'm not even driving into thyroid hormone here. I'm just talking hormones in general. And then the main marker for stress response, because of our energy balance and hormone shifting, being cortisol pattern. And then cortisol starts shifting. So our inflammation response is not doing what we need it to do. And so we're creating more issue. But let's just say, for example, Monday you're doing like 12 to 1,500 calories because you've decided that's what you need, because you have this like totally screwed up body that needs to eat less than everybody else. Or you have a coach that does that to you, or whatever, I don't know. But this is super, super common pattern, okay? So you're trying to toe the line on this really, really strict diet, which is around 12 to 1,500 calories. And that's just me like throwing numbers out of my ass. I'm not basing this off of anybody. Then Tuesday rolls around and you're trying to do the same thing, and you do it. Because when you meal prepped Sunday to get ready for Monday, you were in like the honeymoon excitement phase of your plan. So you were romanticizing it and you were building up that excitement with it. And so you got this like adrenaline, dopamine rush with it. And when your cortisol patterns are not as responsive, then you've also got other hormones such as dopamine, serotonin. You got to remember as well, if you're having inflammation in the gut and your guts aren't doing what they want to do, then your serotonin supply and your ability to process dopamine and create dopamine is all shifted. It's all shifted. So, okay, so off my soapbox. So you're on your 12 to 1300 calories, 1350 calories Tuesday, and then Wednesday hits, and you know what? You're at Starbucks, and fuck it, I'm having a Frappuccino. So then you're like 1500, and you kind of beat yourself up over it, but you're like, you know what? It's just Wednesday. It's probably fine. Thursday rolls around, and you barely could sleep the night before. You are exhausted, you are starving, and all you can think about is food. All you want is food. So you go and you slash all 4 tires. You're like, screw the Frappuccino, I'm taking it down. And you have like an overfeed of 4,000 calories. And then you're like, you wake up Friday and you feel like a bag of assholes. You're just so disappointed in yourself. You're in the shame circle. You're like, shit, I can't do anything. I got to get back on my 1300 calories. Like that's what I got to do. I suck. I'm weak-minded. Something's wrong with me. And then so you go down to your 1300 calories for the day. And then guess what? Saturday rolls around and you're like, you know what? I got to check in on Sunday, or I have something that I need to do, or I'm just going to punish myself come Saturday. And so I'm going to start out eating very, very little throughout the day. And as the day goes on, then I'm going to start picking. And before you know it, it's a 3,000, 3,500 calorie day. You came home, everybody's having pizza. Somebody wants to go for wings. You say, fuck it, I can't handle this. I'll start again Monday. Then Sunday rolls around and you feel even worse. You are now, that's it. I'm going to get back on track come Monday, and I'm going to eat 1,800 calories today. That's what I end up clocking in at. And that might be a more reasonable amount, but you know what? You've also dysregulated the chain all week. And then come Monday, what you going to do? You're going to go right back here because you didn't learn the lesson. You didn't figure it out. So what this actually looks like is, unlike this pattern, which is up, it's like this. Do, 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 do. You're all over the shop. And guess what? You've gone nowhere. You've actually gone nowhere. If anything, you've made it harder for yourself to ever get to this because you keep doing this. And this can look like things like always starting again on Monday, begging your coach to diet, constantly looking for a new diet, and then starting it like, you know, like I have another video where I talk about mastering the basics, but like if you don't have the basics in your life going with your nutrition, like why are you focusing on intermittent fasting and nutrient timing and, you know, I'm going to take 1 swig of apple cider vinegar with 1 shot of lemon, then I'm going to take my vitamin D and my fish oil and woo, like, and then I'm going to time it out 30 minutes later, I'm going to eat, but I'm not going to have carbohydrates until I backload them later on. Like, boom, all kinds of crazy making. And guess what this is? All this massive distraction, massive distraction because of the obsessiveness of it, right? It keeps you safe and distracted. So this pattern here is so typical, and yet look what happens. You don't get anywhere towards your goal, and you constantly keep resetting. The progress that you're making may actually be going backwards, not forwards, and you may be noticing because of the shifts in your hormones and the way that your stress patterns, your inflammation patterns are shifting, that you're noticing like more fluid retention. You're noticing shifts in your menstrual cycles that are like really, really haywire. You're noticing your joints are more sore, your inflammation is higher, your gut health is way off, and you're way more obsessive. And guess what? Maybe even you're gaining weight because of the inflammatory response, the scale's going up. Maybe you're even noticing more cellulite. So it's almost like the body stops and slows down. Well, it does. It slows down the processes through this, but you want this. And that's the frickin' problem. So here we go. We're going to talk about what this really looks like, because this is like the money shot. This is where it counts. And that's where you're going to see my freaking selfie light. Sorry, guys. Let me see here. Let's see if I can do this better without the light. Oh, boo. Here we go. I love my whiteboard. It was away for a while, and now we're reunited, and it feels so good. Okay, so this is what it really looks like. Look at this thing, okay? This is an arrow, but it's a zig and a zag, and that selfie light's gonna drive me flipping crazy, but I'm going for it. Okay, so the big things about actual physique transformation and long-term forever goal, forever home bodies is that the process is completely non-linear. I'm gonna put this down for a sec here, like this. Okay, it's completely non-linear. There's nothing about it that is like, boom, because in order to get from here to here, there's gotta be all these shifts and these zigs and these zags that actually will take you there. Because this here, this self-destructive stuff, this total like mind fuckery here and body fuckery has caused so much dysregulation, not only in your brain, but in your body, that this has to be nonlinear to heal. Like you're not going to get there without this nonlinear process. So what that means is, and this is like the part where like people don't like when I talk about this, but this is like the most important piece that I can tell you right now. Hold on, get my face in there. Okay. Time out of dieting, all right? Time off dieting. And okay, so that can be, hold on, I'm gonna look at me again. That can be not tracking your macros, but that can actually also be tracking your macros or having a nutrition plan. So when I say time out of dieting, I mean a time out of a caloric deficit, because you may have to keep tracking your macros or following a plan in order to regulate a lot of the hormonal and digestive and patterns that you have here, such as, you know, regulating your blood sugar levels. Like you may have done so much of this that your blood sugar patterns are completely off the map. So you might need to still be on some type of plan in order to learn how to regulate this. You may need to still be on macros so that you learn how to trust yourself with food and understand that your body can work with foods that are not within your 5 spectrum magical foods, right? You have to get into an exploration of understanding yourself, okay? So this is a big one, and this is like when you're here, because there is so much distraction, you really are taken away from yourself. So a lot of it is not even listening to your own body's cues and clues, it's about suppressing them. So because you're not able to do this, you know, properly, this 1200, 1300, whatever it is, the assumption in your head is that you just have to keep working harder. You just need to keep pushing harder. But what's happening when you do that is you are ignoring your body, you're ignoring your brain. So you have taught yourself to ignore that. So this exploration piece could be really, really uncomfortable and really, really foreign for you, especially if you've been dieting your whole freaking life. So there's that, there's the patience, and then the understanding that you're going to have like, and when I say patience, I mean, it could take you years to get this. So just so we're clear, like, I've seen women that I've worked with who I think get it, and then they're not getting it, and then one day, years later, they're getting it. Like it's not an easy transition. So that's why coaching can be really advantageous, because you get the support and you have someone to show you and teach you what's going on and understanding what's going on over here, because all these things are going to come up for you to work through. So there's the patience, there's the zig and the zag, managing your stress. And right now during a pandemic, this is like even harder to kind of relate to, if managing your stress, because everybody is experiencing stress at a conscious or a subconscious level. Like there's no way you can't be stressed in some way, because our entire lifestyle has been shifted. But you have to figure out how to manage that. Dealing with your hormones. So a lot of times when people are in this denial and suppression phase, they're also dealing with hormonal stress that they don't want to address either. So when I say like, okay, let's go get some hormonal blood work, let's do some Dutch hormone tests, let's do this, let's do that. It's like, yeah, one day I'll do that, right? Because it's like, we don't want to deal with it because it's so uncomfortable. Step out of your comfort zone. This is the big one. This is so comfortable, even though it's erratic, it's useless, it's mental masturbation, it's making you feel like shit, it's an abusive relationship with yourself, but you don't want to step out of your comfort zone. That's what you know. Also, chase feeling good. Like, really chase the good feels. Like, that's where you want to be. So when you are feeling good, keep feeling good. And that doesn't mean you feel good because you stepped on the scale and you lost 2 pounds or you lost 5 pounds or you're not gaining weight. It's actually taking personal inventory of like not only your health markers, but your vitality and how you are actually feeling, how you are seeing your world through your fishbowl now. Because in this fishbowl, it's very myopic, it's very obsessive, it's very degrading, it's very shameful and guilt-ridden, right? And it's all about suppression. But then we go over here and we want to feel good, so we got to keep chasing good. You need to work on lowering inflammation, and that may mean lowering the amount of exercise that you do. That may mean choosing foods within your life that balance out your blood sugar levels, aid in your digestion, and don't feed into an inflammatory response. So for example, you know that you don't process dairy very well. In fact, you are lactose intolerant and you've had real issues with dairy in the past. And right now you can't go to the bathroom very regularly, but you keep pushing dairy into your diet. You keep eating it and you keep increasing inflammation. So it's not one of those things like maybe you won't have to eliminate it forever, but it might be something temporarily. And that's where, as a holistic nutritionist, that's where my background comes in, and that's what I like to be working with on my clients. You have to reduce the inflammation in the gut, the brain, the joints, and your skin. So skin eruptions, acne, rashes, psoriasis, eczema are all telltale signs that there is something going on that is causing some kind of inflammation. Whether it's cutaneous on your skin, so dermal, or it's internal within the gut. And these are really, really important things to note. But this one here, this is the baby. This is like the money shot, and that is dealing with your shit. Dealing with your shit. So because here there's a lot of avoidance, when you get into this non-linear process and you start getting challenged on, your diet mindset, your body image mindset, where all this originated from, what you're avoiding in your life. And like, let's face it, dieting is hugely distracting. And I know this as a former competitor. There was plenty of preps that I did that I wasn't in a body that should have been doing it, but mentally I needed to tap out. Mentally, I needed to be in another place. I needed to distract myself entirely instead of dealing with my shit. And that is so, so huge. 99.9% of the time, when I have a client doing this, there's a lot of distraction and avoidance of dealing with the shit. So I'm not saying uproot your childhood and get mad at your mama and your daddy and your uncle and everybody else who's pissed you off, or blame everybody for your unhappiness, because that's a childish way of behaving. But dealing with your shit in terms of finding forgiveness, finding peace, actually confronting what's going on for you. Maybe you are approach avoidant. Maybe you are somebody who isn't dealing with something that's a blockage in terms of your energy fields and your mindset and your spirituality or your relationships or whatever it is. Deal with your shit. So in all reality, when we're looking at this, it's a zig and zag. And the way that we actually do this is not being in a state of caloric deficit so often. It has to actually be out of the deficit for extended periods of time. There may be phases where we build up calories and we build up muscularity in terms of hypertrophy and training and building muscle mass and shaping the body, but there's a lot less time cutting. In fact, the cutting phases are very, very few and far between, because every time you cut, you go back into this pattern. And especially if you've had your brain programmed this way for a very, very long time, and even your body programmed this way for a very, very long time, you are constantly triggering the fight and flight response, which is then creating more cortisol and inflammation because of the stress that this puts you under, because of the stress it puts you under mentally, but also physically. So this process is super, super nonlinear, and it needs to be very strategic with your building phases and with your calorie increases, but also as you sit through maintenance. And while you sit through maintenance, the zigs and the zags are less about your calories, to be honest with you, and more about what you need to deal with at a cellular level, and cellular level also being what things you're avoiding in your life that you're not dealing with, your suppression, okay? What you're pushing down in your life. And so these zigs and these zags, each moment is a lesson. So if you're with a coach, hopefully this is working in your favor. As you are with that coach, they may point out something to you like, hey, you know what? Listen, Jen, I know that you just done like 2 years of dieting and you really want to keep pushing for your next goal. I know you really want to keep going there. Like, I know you want to, I'm going to use competitors as an example because you're the worst. Was one, love you, but you're the worst. So, but you in your competition season really notice, like, and most competitors do, a shift in your mental health, a shift in the way that you feel about yourself, a shift in the way that you relate to the world. But you're going to say, like, guess what? I just want to keep pushing for the show. Like, I just want to compete. I want to compete. I want to compete. And so as we try to do this like non-linear thing, the zig and the zag, because you're like, yeah, no, I'm going to do a show. It's prep time. Let's do prep, baby. We get here and then we get stuck. And maybe you learn a little bit, but you don't learn enough. And then we have to go back to this whole reverse your body up and then keep going with it. And maybe eventually you get there, but it takes you a lot longer because you keep dieting. You keep wanting to go back to that deficit. And that's no different for lifestyle clients either that have a lot of these crazy diet habits since childhood. And a lot of competitors do too, right? So it's not just competitors and just not just chronic dieters. It's a blend of the two. And they kind of attract each other, you know, especially if you have any kind of low self-worth and then you come into this and you have achievement, clinging to that achievement is very, very natural. So, but as things go along, like let's just say you take this time out, you take the time out of the deficit and you say, I'm going to work at this for as long as it takes. Okay. And this is like me being realistic with you. And you're going to allow each moment as a lesson and a checkpoint, you know, and you're going to focus on your progressive overload through your training. And that doesn't just mean lifting heavier weights. Progressive overload is not just lifting heavier weights. Okay. But you're actually going to figure out how to train so that you're not increasing inflammation in the body. You're not going to keep saying to your coach, I want to do a prep, time to cut me. Because that makes it very difficult. Like, one of the things people don't understand is, yes, there are, like, I'm going to talk about you competitors for a second real quick. Competitors do want this. They do want that. But because there's these shows in between, it takes them a lot longer to get there. And in fact, sometimes they never, ever get there because they keep doing the dieting phase. But every time you go back into that deficit, you keep sending a signal to your body and to your brain to be in this reactive state. And so it makes it harder. You might have to not eat as much in your off season as you optimally could. You might have to do more activity to keep your body weight in check so that you can actually get where you need to be for your show because you have limited time. So it becomes this little juggling act of pending dates, if that makes sense. So for example, you do a show, you get your calories, they go down to 1,200, you reverse diet yourself back up in your off season, slowly but surely. Like, yes, you put some weight on, but it's a healthy amount of weight and you're not overshooting set point. And you only get up to, let's say, 1,800 calories in your off season, but you're actually, you know what, if you did this properly, you're capable of so much more. But because you want to do another show, your contest date starts rolling around, or your mindset is here in this stuff. So you're eager beaver to start your prep, or you're eager to not have your calories increase because there's a fear of the weight gain that's going to come with that. So it becomes this really toxic cycle with yourself. So each lesson is a moment. You get progressive overload. You notice as you keep doing these zigs and these zags, when you do this properly, your strength goes up, your energy goes up, your mood improves, your poops improve, your sleep improves. And it's a strategic plan where you know how to, because you've listened to your body and you started working on understanding your body, where you know when to back off and you understand your biofeedback. And guess what happens when you get there? You become your own damn coach and you don't need me because you know yourself. You've dealt with your shit. You are dealing with your shit on each nonlinear process. So when we go back to that whole reverse dieting thing, which I talked about in the beginning, and about how people have this like misconception, I believe, surrounding it. And it's not their fault. There's like been people like myself that have really wanted it to be one way, but it's not. So, okay. So this is over a 3-year period. Okay. And this is like, if we're getting there, I'm going to use 3 years. It's maybe too long, but it's a good example. Okay. Especially if you keep working at it. And like I said before, if the goal here is to trust yourself and to have a really healthy relationship with food, there's a high probability that you're no longer dieting at that point. You're no longer quantifying everything for yourself because you've built that trust, and those face down moments, you've learned from them. Okay. So, and as well as all this stress hormone, everything balances out, your body is far more responsive. You'd be really surprised at how much your body can improve without all that stress. So you get there, but let's just say along the way, year run, because you've been a chronic underfeeder, the highest you get with your caloric intake in maintenance. Okay. When I'm talking about chilling the fuck out and doing nothing, maintenance might be 16 to 1800 calories. And that's like not uncommon. Okay. So you kind of ride that out. And then the next year, maybe you do a little bit of a build through a reverse diet where you slowly ramp your food up from where you were at the 1600, and you get up to 2000 calories. And now not only are you eating more food, but you're noticing even more that your brain is less food fixated. You're noticing that your biofeedback just keeps improving more and more, but you're not pushing this envelope because you don't need to push it, because if you do, it causes dysregulation in your hormone cycle. Okay. So, and then by the 3rd year, maybe you're maintaining your weight on that 2000 to 2200 calories, but you're not doing it in a way where you're actually dieting. It's just that your body gets everything that it needs from that amount, and it's in this forever goal without you having to dick around with it every day and quantify it and make it perfect. And guess what? Your biofeedback and your OCD and your hormones and your life shifts. And I'm going to tell you guys, those of you that compete, if you get there, you might not ever compete again, because a lot of the competitor drive comes from this cycle, because it fucks up your brain chemistry so much. And I say that like I drop F-bombs, but it's true. Fucks up your brain chemistry. So this is just like an example. And I know, like, I hate throwing these numbers out, because when I do, people are like, oh, well, I should eat 1600 calories today. And like, no, that's not what I'm saying. It's like giving you an example of over time, when you start bringing your food up and your biofeedback improves and your brain chemistry balances out, this obsessiveness, the inflammation, even the way that you approach food and how much you diet, or if you diet at all or even compete at all or whatever, dissipates. That's the holy grail, my friends. So no more of this. Don't do this. Don't do it. If you do any cutting, do this first. This stuff matters. This is cool. This is awesome. Do it. Do this. It's lovely there. Bye, guys.